Hello. Hello. Oh, I can see myself live. That's wonderful. Hello. I hope you guys can see me. Uh, oh, I can hear myself now. That's excellent. Well, anybody ready for a grand adventure? I'm going to go ahead and start talking to the audience because now I realize that we've just begun the stream. Welcome to the OneRing.net. That is our acronym TORN. TORN Tuesday is the name of the show. This is the channel and this is the destination. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have folks gathering here on the social media. There's all kinds of people coming in on the airwaves. We're live on Twitter, Periscope, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitter. Did I say that? Allow me to introduce myself. Hello. This is Clifford. That's right. Clifford the Big Red Dog, as my friends call me. And we have some delicious refreshment. We have some watermelon seltzer. And I wish it came in pints. You know, actually, I wish this came in pints. This would be, if they had tall boys of these sparkling, lime and watermelon beverages and all these things, I should put stock in the water beverages. It's all I drink now. Um, Welcome to a refreshing Torn Tuesday. It is time for hobbity good refreshment, lots of conversation about news, updates, what's going on in the world of Amazon Studios filming a Second Age uh, adventure fantasy series for Amazon Prime. That's what's happening right now. We've got news about them getting closer and closer to the end of their production. Um, According to the headline, halfway through with their production. Now, my name is Clifford Broadway, and I'm a longtime writer and contributor and editor, voice person there at the OneRing.net. Also, I was the writer and the producer of Ringer's Lord of the Fans and the award-winning documentary, which will soon be coming back to a streaming platform near you. Now, also, um, with regard to Justin and any other co-host, well, I don't know where he is, but I suppose at any given time he's going to wander into the show. I'm sure he will. Hmm. We're just getting things started. Hello, I can see all kinds of people in the YouTube live show. Hello, look, there's who's that there? Oh, hey, Princess Toy Nerd, Daniel, Fellowship of the Fans, there's Iravandi. Hey, Andrew, everybody's in here. Nice to see the folks out there. Yeah, I know. Look what I'm doing to my glasses. I'll tell you the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why you've been watching me for 7 years now doing this live stream show and for 20 years at theonering.net, now suddenly my prescription has changed. I just went to the eye doctor 2.5 or 3 weeks ago, and I should be getting my new eyeglasses. Those I should go for the little half moon spectacles that Dumbledore is so famous for having, like on the end of his nose, and keep looking at people over my Dumbledore spectacles. I should go for that, but I've got some really cool glasses, and they should be here any minute. And that way, you won't have to see me doing this all the time because I keep it's kind of stupid. I know. I know you're all sick of watching me do that. That's ridiculous. But I do it again. I have to see and read the names of all the people who are there with me in the live chat. Hello there. How you doing? Oh yeah, Scuba Steve. Everybody's. Hey, it's beginning of days. I can see everybody in there. Well, yeah. So the show has begun. You can watch us on many platforms. We have reference materials. We have maps of Middle Earth, and this might be one of the best places to start the conversation. Um, mhm. This is my trusted ultimate Christopher Tolkien map. This map that came inside, I think, this anniversary edition of the Silmarillion that I had. It may have been from another anniversary edition of The Lord of the Rings in one of those large volumes that combines all three volumes together in one complete book. But if you look at the initials right here, it's Christopher Tolkien's initials in red, right there. There it is. So you know he was the guy right there who, hello, Justin, nice to see you. He was the guy who made everything happen. After his father passed away, it was Christopher Tolkien who uh, took everything by the reins and put his father's manuscripts together and collected all the scraps and the half-written bits of paper that were hardly legible. And he took all the time in the world to put all those things together. And so, you know, that's why I always have his maps and other references that I have. They're quite useful. This is one of the more intriguing references, very hard to find. This is from Richard Blackwelder. Richard Blackwelder put together a Tolkien thesaurus. Now, what would this be? What does that mean? Excuse me. You may be asking, what is a Tolkien thesaurus? Well, it's not a book that shows all the similar words and their synonyms in Middle Earth, and instead, it's an index. It's really a master index of every word in the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books. And it keeps track and shows you the page number. Every time that Tolkien mentioned the word riverbank or patchwork or other, you know, strange words such as smite, you know, anything you can think of, you would look up the word and you can see exactly where it is in the Hobbit and Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers and the Return of the King, and you would be able to find it instantly. So here, for example, place. Oh, plague. All right. How many times did Tolkien use the word plague? Okay. 4 times. He only used the word plague 4 times in the Lord of the Rings, 3 times in Fellowship, once in the Two Towers, and never in the Hobbit. So now I know the word plague never appeared in the word Hobbit. You know what I just stumbled across what I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying. Oh, hello everybody. Yeah, so intriguing. Always useful to find when I need to find a spot quote or an actual reference to something in one of the lines of poetry or in somewhere in the prose. I can find it immediately. I wonder if Justin's going to join our live show now that we're here. We've got all of our reference materials together, and we're going to talk about the breaking news. As long as I can have my co-host. Where is he? When will the Amazon series be released? Okay, very, very good question. Putting that up front, you're going to have this show in post-production probably through the entire year of 2021. It will not appear on TV screens until 2022. That's our best guess. Justin, are you coming on the show? He might have a different opinion, but I think the general consensus is that 2022 is the first time we will see the show. Hey, how you doing? Hi, Oscar. Who else is in there? Hello, Galen. Oh, yes. I'm glad Daniel is asking me about the Fonstad Atlas. Uh, I will include for you, if I can find a link to it. I did this interview with her, with Karen Wynne Fonstad. She is amazing. Fonstad is the most amazing cartographer of fantasy worlds, and you know that she's famous for publishing the Atlas of Middle Earth. She published the Atlas of Pern for the Dragon Riders of Pern fans out there, and her Atlas of Middle Earth is spectacular and was fully revised by later editions of the Silmarillion and additional details that came out with some of the History of Middle Earth series, which starts uniquely with Unfinished Tales. Really, really good stuff. I love Fonstad's Atlas. Um, and over here, in one of these collected books, we did a couple of books at theonering.net, and one of them features my interview with her, with Karen Fonstad. Hello there. What's going on here in the YouTube chat? Um, Daniel, I might not be able to find the link for it because I think it's only in print. But if it's in print, I think we can transcribe it and probably put it up online and reproduce it. I think that would be something really cool to do, is to have that resurface. In fact, that might be something really cool to put up on the main website, is to have a new transcription of my interview with Karen Wynne Fonstad. Oh, wait, are you guys serious? Like, okay, I'm going to show it to you right here, my copy of the Atlas of Middle Earth, right here. There it is. Great stuff. Okay, really great stuff. And oh, look, now I can see myself on the high screen. Now, hello there, Tammy. Nice to see you. Ah, yes, Carl Hofstetter will be publishing in 2021, The Nature of Middle Earth. That'll be very intriguing. Hello, Pipsky. Nice to see you as well. Sean, you're funny. Sean, you are very, very funny. That's funny. No, don't worry. Um, our local resident co-host and prankster extraordinaire, Justin, he will be here at some point in time. Now, here is where the rubber meets the road. There's so much happening in production there in New Zealand, and there's a lot of people actively on locations, and I've heard some detail confirming that that ice wall, we were talking all about the behind the scenes photos that were leaked and the conversation that happened last week with some punitive communications. I, yes, hello, Justin. There was some punitive efforts made by Amazon. Hello. I learned in my research behind the scenes that that big scene, this action scene in the script, was in there from a long, long, long time ago. It is one of the earliest big set pieces. It was written in the scripts there from a long time ago, and in some conversations it was out, and they took it out and they got rid of the idea. Then in other conversations they drafted it back in, and it came back into the script, and it went over and over again. Oops, it looks like I lost my light over here on the side. Let me go fix my light. But anyways, this is the ice wall. It has been in the scripts from the very beginning, and it's all real. They actually stuck with it, and they've filmed it. Justin, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks right now? I'm gonna.
Hi. I guess I'm here. Hi everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. Um, just managing some jiggery pokery. So that's a confirmation that what we saw last week is actually part of the show. Uh,
Hello,
it's not part of Cowboy Bebop.
hello. Can anyone hear me now?
It's really part of the show. Hi. Hi, Cliff.
It just went silent.
It just went silent? Oh
Okay, now I
boy.
can hear you.
Oh, hello.
Hello, now I'm back. So I fixed my light bulb. Thank you very much. Okay.
You said it wrong. You have to say, well, I'm back.
Of course I do. Um,
Hey, Cliff, before you, so that's a good confirmation, but I wanted to mention
mm,
that we should be wishing we should be wishing the appendices happy birthday because as of this last week in the last 7 days,
yes, that's
it
right.
really is the 65th anniversary of the release of Return of the King. Happy birthday, Return of the King. Happy birthday, the appendices. Published this week in 1955. Uh, Cliff, an interesting thing happened on Twitter.
Yes, did it now?
Uh, the when I posted about the release of Lord of the Rings on this week in 1955, we also brought up the concept of it must have been the best-selling book in the time of Back to the Future when Marty McFly goes back to November 5th, 1955. That's when Back to the Future happens. November 5th, 1955. This will be what, a week and a half after the heralded ending of Lord of the Rings is published.
hmm
And some book
But
historian.
it wasn't, that book was not tabletop conversation with the college kids
Hold
until
on,
a
what?
decade later, until the
Why?
60s,
Wait,
okay?
what? What? Wait, you're telling me this
The, you
wasn't the
know,
bestseller?
dude, I was the guy who did the documentary on the whole popular culture built and surrounding Tolkien's phenomenon. His storytelling was respected, but it was quietly, quietly appreciated at the time of its publication. Let me just put it that way.
Hey, speak.
At the time of its original publication, it was it was it was more quietly appreciated than it was in the 60s when it was voluminously, explosively over the top appreciated in the 60s. But in the 1950s, it was not every kid in high school talking about it. It was only like the literature people talking about it. It was not going to take shape into what you think of as popular culture until the 60s,
Really?
to be honest. Yes, yes.
So this wasn't a runaway success like the Hobbit, one of the best-selling books of the first 50 years of world literature, and you're telling me
We could do
that
some research. We could look up the numbers. We could
so
actually look up the sales numbers. Let's look it up.
wait, but I believe you. I believe you're telling the truth. I believe your accuracy because there were other literary historians on Twitter that wanted to correct the record and say you would not see Lord of the Rings in Back to the Future because it really wasn't that popular and it wasn't a bestseller. Um, this kind of blows my mind, Cliff, because we're we in the how do I explain this? We've brought up into a world where Lord of the Rings is the best-selling book series of the 20th century. It's the most winningest Oscar movie, and everyone and we're taught
It was
that the
it was
Silmarillion.
voted, and it was voted by readers to be the greatest book of the 20th century. Voted by readers. Yes, that's
That's
true.
right. So we're
Yes,
also told that
which
J.R.R.
caused a lot of critical people to go squish faced in dismay because they a lot of people in the world of literati always disagreed with that assessment about Tolkien being the best book of the 20th century. But I'm not
So
one of them.
we're brought up with this historical narrative that
Mhm.
Tolkien wanted to publish the Silmarillion first. The publisher said, "No way, Jose. No one's going to want to read that junk. Make something accessible."
You
And then
let's set the
Tolkien
stage. You mean after the success of The Hobbit? After the success of The Hobbit, yes, Professor Tolkien wanted the Silmarillion to be structured and put out as the massive backstory of Middle-earth. He had no idea he would eventually write The Lord of the Rings at that moment in time.
Wait,
And then he went
uh,
and wrote it.
it is my understanding that he wanted to do the Silmarillion and the history of Middle Earth. They said, "No way, Jose, do a sequel to that ring story that that other thing." And so he
You
ended
mean The
up
Hobbit?
he
Yes, that is
wanted
correct. We're
yeah.
we're, we're both saying the same thing.
Okay,
Yes, yes,
so the
yes.
Silmarillion was never in a state ready for publishing. He pitched an
Mm,
idea, and the publisher said,
that is correct.
Okay, and then
And
to
it
the
broke his
publish
heart.
and to the publisher's credit, he went on and made Lord of the Rings, but he said this is one book, and the publisher said, this is so big, so long. Calm your horses. There ain't enough paper
No,
in
that
existence
would
that we can publish
there
this in one tomb. So
there
tome. So we're going to
there
have to
there were
split this up.
there were practical considerations, yes, of the paper shortage. The paper shortage, let us remind our good listeners that it was after the war, right? Okay, it was right after World War II, and there was a paper shortage.
Well, this is
It wa-
not
For
right
real.
after World War II, honey. This is 10 years or more after World War II. We're talking about the 65th anniversary makes this 1955. We're talking about November 5th, 1955, October 20th, 1955, the publishing of Return of the King, which was published 10 months after the last one, correct? If I recall correctly, Fellowship was published in the spring of 54. Two Towers was published in the fall of 54. And then they made fans wait a whole year to get the completion of Return of the King. Um, so, uh, uh, so the Silmarillion was never uh, in a narrative form of any capacity to publish because the publishers had squashed the initial concept of the Silmarillion. Correct?
Um, you would say that the Silmarillion was more um, uh, something that Tolkien was driven from his earliest days as a writer. And he
Yep.
didn't ever like and Andrew is correct in the chat in saying that there was never one complete version because he kept revising things and then he thought these stories are connected to those stories and then there was more to tell. There was more to tell. There was much more going on in his magnificent brain.
Right, but these are notes and loose stories. They were not. It was not a compendium. He didn't make the effort to like. I've got a book ready for publishing. Do you want it? And the publisher said no. It was like, hey, I got this idea, like this big old narrative history. And the publisher was like, I don't like the idea. It's like, oh,
No, I believe his wife, from what I might be sketchy on the details, but in terms of the Silmarillion, I believe his wife Edith type scripted and type wrote lots and lots of pages of manuscript materials that the publisher could read.
Yeah, but
So it wasn't there was
loosely, Christopher Tolkien himself described it as mostly notes and side notes, which is lesser than a note.
well, I know that they were presented in like a readable format,
Not
but
before Lord of the Rings.
what is more legendary is the nature of Professor Tolkien writing out his letters, where his letters go on and on and on for tens of thousands of words, with Tolkien explaining his grander mythology. You
Okay,
know, um,
so
that's that's what we're left with. There's a lot of scholarship that comes from not just Christopher Tolkien putting together unpublished materials. that come out later on, and they paint a bigger picture of how he drafted this world, how he put it together. But a lot of scholarship also comes from other physical materials that Tolkien wrote in response to fans, when he wrote back to his friends, to his publisher, to his family, when he wrote letters to his children.
But these weren't
And
published
yeah,
until
there's a
the
lot,
80s. These were not published to the 80s. These weren't public. The grand scheme of things was not known until the early 80s. I'm asking,
right.
the public was not aware of anything Silmarillion until after his death.
That's true. The publisher said, if you want this book to be a success, you need to
Which
give us
book?
more.
The
All right.
the idea, the
Let me
concept of
let me
Silmarillion, because it wasn't
let,
a
let me
book.
let me let me rephrase my sentence. When discussing the Silmarillion and the large mythologies of the First Age and the cosmology of gods and goddesses behind it, and the theft of the Silmarils and the early Dark Lord Morgoth and the sons of Feanor, killing other elves, fighting against elves to fulfill their blood oath for capturing these jewels. All of this stuff was explained to the publisher. In what detail, I'm not quite sure, but I'll research that. And the publisher said, if you want any type of storytelling to be successful in the future,
Mhm.
stick to the hobbits. We want more of
We
those
want more of
hobbits.
those hobbits.
Because the publisher reacted with a very sharp awareness that all the stories of Feanor and the Silmarils and the Valar and the struggles of the firstborn children of Iluvatar and the settlement of Beleriand and the ruin of Doriath and all these things did not include any Bilbo Baggins. There were no hobbits at all. And, any publisher is thinking worth his salt. He's thinking what is going to be successful
What's
and
gonna
we're going to
sell?
make money. What's
Yeah.
going to make money?
What what's
That's
what's
exactly. and
what's gonna sell? And Sean,
and
I'm
and
gonna
now
get to my
imagine. Now,
point shortly.
thank you. I'm just saying that ultimately it's interesting to me in retrospect that Professor Tolkien treasured those stories of the First Age, and he was so close to his heart, and he worked on it since he was a very young writer. It was his
They were
most
notes.
treasured
They were just notes.
cosmology.
It was
It was his
it was
notes.
him forming his
But
thoughts that led into
but
Hobbit and Lord of the
but
Rings.
imagine the heartbreak when your publisher tells you over and over again that is not commercially viable. That is
And
interesting, Professor Tolkien,
they're
but it's
right.
not commercially viable. Now, imagine his personal intellectual heartbreak that they kept saying this is not, but no, they were wrong. Because when the Silmarillion was published in 1977, it was the breakaway #1 bestseller
In the wake of
across
his death, in the wake of his death,
the English speaking
in
world
the
and beyond.
wake of the first animated film, there are other reasons that the Silmarillion was a successfully released book. And
It was
Andrew,
years before
years
the animated
after,
film was made.
nope,
No, it was years
no, it
before
wasn't.
Ralph Bakshi. It was
It was
released in
released.
1977,
What
and the
was?
Bakshi film was released. The Bakshi film was released over a year later, and the Silmarillion was published first.
Okay.
Okay, and
Andrew in the
let's
chat room says
check
Christopher's
that.
final version of the Quenta is much different from his father's earlier version, which no one had
Yes,
seen. So basically, no one really knew about the Silmarillion. It wasn't fully formed as a narrative story. Tolkien was just like, here's what I think happened, partially. And you know how publishing works, Cliff. An author has a hit book on his hands, and the publisher says, "What do you got next?" Right? I mean, that's almost the
yes,
first question. Hey, you're a best-selling author. What do you got next? And the only thing Tolkien comes back with is, I've got a bunch of notes about this world, and the Bible is going to be called the Silmarillion, and it's the history of Middle Earth, and it's so far removed from hobbitses, you know, that the publisher's like, thank you for that idea, but no, that's not going to sell. Come at us with something else. By the way, this is like what, 15 years after The Hobbit. So I don't think Tolkien had really wanted to publish it. He was just kind of like, the publisher was like, give us something more, give us something more. And Tolkien's like, well, I got this thing. It's a bunch of
Okay,
ideas
wait a
and
minute.
notes. And of course the publisher's going to say, no, that's not going to sell. So, and then he decides, I'll write about the Ring, the War of the Ring, and everything like that, and that became a best-selling book. The reason I'm getting to this is, uh,
Hmm.
1965, which right now we're marking the 65th anniversary of the publishing of Return of the King, means that this is the 65th anniversary of the publishing of the appendices, and first
Yes.
the first hints of those things that would be expanded upon in the Silmarillion. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is the appearance, the very first time that anybody in the popular culture, after waiting for long delays in the publication date, after waiting for the Fellowship of the Ring to be followed up by the Two Towers, and then later to be followed up much later, The Return of the King was a shocking treasure trove of discovery with the appendices. Yes,
The appendices were a novel concept to books. They hinted
yes.
at a much larger history that we had not been exposed to. And
Admittedly, I think admittedly John Ronald was trying to piggyback on the inability to get the Silmarillion published,
mhm.
and he was piggybacking on this moment in time to get those supplemental materials put in there that were most relevant, including a lot of notes and discussion about Numenor and the fall of Numenor, but just just a
It was
just
his.
a whiff,
It was a little
just a
little tease.
whiff.
It was a tease
It
to
was the
maybe drum
way
up demand.
appetizer.
It was an
It
appetizer
was,
to hopefully inspire some organic demand
but
for his
let's
Silmarillion. Correct? He was.
let me rephrase. Let me rephrase. It wasn't really a tapas plate. It was smaller than that. It was actually smaller than a tapas plate. It was just like, was that an appetizer? No, it was you getting a little taste of an appetizer because the waiter just walked by and all you got was one.
Right.
And that's
You got
that's all
one
you got.
pig in a
You got
blanket.
one,
Not
and that's
pigs in a
it.
blanket. You got one
But
pig in a blanket.
at least at least compared to the further details that are written in the Calibeth that discuss Numenor, and that was published years after Tolkien's passing away.
Why don't
Yes,
you
so
think? Why don't you think Tolkien published the Silmarillion? He must have been a very powerful literary figure, especially going into the
mm,
late '60s. And his.
I wouldn't want
Why don't you think he
I
published the Silmarillion?
I wouldn't want to venture a guess.
Okay, okay.
There's
Oh,
there's but there's I would let the conversation stand with taking a closer look at Humphrey Carpenter's biography, which is a, a easy read. Come on, people, it is an easy read. You could have gotten a copy from your local library if you wanted it. And you know what? Local libraries are like allowing for opening for remote pickup. You could pick up your books and get them. So, just take a look at the story of the Silmarillion and how Professor Tolkien personally struggled with it, knowing that if he worked on it to the point of his own satisfaction, and after the massive success of The Lord of the Rings and the generational change that happened in the publishing world after the Lord of the Rings success in the 1960s, I think Tolkien was working on it and working on it, but he was a perfectionist, as he was in so many things, and
I
he
don't
he
know,
kept on
man.
he kept on working on it to make sure he got the stuff to the point where he wanted it, and it was never quite there. And then, time marches on, and his wife passed away. Unfortunately, when Edith died, Professor Tolkien may have lost some of his personal heart in
I'll go
his,
with
he
that.
might have lost,
Well,
some, so things change in your lifetime. when you get a lot older, something might have changed. But no, he was still working on it. And let me not say anything too definitively about it, but allow our viewers to enjoy learning about that in his biography and in his published letters. But definitely check out the Humphrey Carpenter biography.
Well,
It's a jolly good read.
there's a
It's
few
easy. It's an easy read.
there's a few people in the chat room that are saying that they read the Lord of the Rings as children, as young adults, but they did not read the appendices. They stopped at the end of the story. So maybe the appendices weren't as popular as they are now. And
Mm,
again, let's look at the timelines, okay, guys? The Hobbit published 1937. Lord of the Rings published 20 years later, 1955. The
hmm
Silmarillion published 20 years after that, 1977, 1976, 77. Lord of the Rings goes into production on the movies 20 years after that. And now we're getting the TV
Yes.
series 20 years after that. So Tol- to, all of Tolkien's works have had these 20-year increments. It was literally 20 years between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then another 20
Yes.
years between The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, and then
Well,
another 20 years.
not a full 20 years. No, not a full 20 years. It was maybe 17, a little less than
uh,
17 years,
yeah,
actually,
right,
and
right around.
he had, changes in his career, his academic career, and many additions to his family, and he had to move house to a whole new house, and so papers got moved and lost and moved around, and so yeah, it was a whole thing trying to write the Lord of the
So
Rings
so his son,
over that length of time.
after his father died, his son, who's a grown ass man himself, had to dive into all these notes and just edit,
Yes,
basically act as an editor and put all of these notes together that he scribbled on throughout the decades in producing the Silmarillion. But so back to 1955, November 5th, 1955. I can't like Back to the Future just affects our brain when we talk about 1955.
well,
It would
let
not
me
have
read
been.
this to you. I have a quick statement which was published by the Tolkien Society just yesterday. It reminds you that Professor Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings while he was living in Oxford, with The Return of the King first being drafted in the mid 1940s. In the 40s, mind you, okay, when he was Merton Professor of English language and literature. The story itself covers the conclusion of the War of the Ring, and following the success in battle, the remaining free peoples of Middle Earth challenge Sauron at the Black Gate, blah, 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 and it's a summary of the crowning of King Elisar. Um, it says uh, it is published with 6 appendices that cover the wider history and languages of Middle Earth. And it was amazing because people they didn't know they were going to get the Silmarillion, and that was all that they could get. The people who wanted so much more information about the world, Professor Tolkien was working through the 1940s and through the 1950s, right until 1955, when it was published on October 20th, and that's over 15 years, um, at
Okay.
least.
So
So I'm
when
thinking, wow,
so when Amazon came to the table and said, "Here is $250 million to your family, Mr. Tolkien, and the Tolkien estate. Here's $250 million." They were paying for the rights to the appendices because the family said, "We are never remaking Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson's movie will stand alone. And if Amazon wants to do anything else, you have to start in the appendices."
you're kidding. That was the conversation?
And that was part of the press release when they announced the
No,
deal.
really,
Then when they announced the
really.
deal, they said the Tolkien family, the Tolkien estate, and the Saul Zaentz company get $250 million, $250 million, and Amazon gets to explore anything mentioned in the appendices, any
Let
storylines, and any
let me interject
characters.
let me interject a quick question.
Okay.
Was this after the point that Christopher Tolkien, who was previously the controlling uh, 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 arbiter, or rather the controlling chairperson of the Tolkien estate, after he retired? Was this whole Amazon licensing deal done before or after Christopher Tolkien retired from his position?
The funny you should ask that. Within, I don't remember if it's within a week after or a week before, it was announced that Christopher Tolkien was relinquishing his control over the state
Mm.
and legacy. So I don't think
So
it's before or
either
after.
way,
I think it happened. Everything
it
happened
happened
at
at
the
the same
same
time.
time. Everything happened at
Okay,
the
all right,
same time. And
fair
Cliff,
enough.
just to remind you how long of a year 2020 has been, we only
Mm.
just lost Christopher Tolkien this year, 2020.
I know. I would like people who are following me on Twitter to take a look at. I kept that pinned to my profile. I did a eulogy, memory on Twitter about the loss, the tremendous loss of Christopher Tolkien and his life and his approach to doing his father's work. And if it's pinned to the top of my profile, so if anybody is following me on QuickBeam 2000 on Twitter, then you'll see that that's the one of the threads that I'm still leaving up there for 2020
That's
because
great.
it is. I'm
You
leaving
know,
it up there for the whole year because it's all about
this
Christopher
year is all
Tolkien
about
leaving
Christopher
us.
Tolkien. And speaking of tributes, I'm glad you
Really.
brought that up because this is my point of this whole conversation, Sean Levy. This is the week of the birthday of the 65th anniversary of the appendices. Our
Mm-hmm.
first hints of the Silmarillion, our first hints of a
Yes.
grander history. This is the
Yes.
appendices is the thing that the Amazon has licensed.
Yes.
The appendices is what Amazon has access to explore. The characters, scenes, places, and storylines mentioned in the appendices, they have full rights to, and they have acquired more rights from some of the other books like The Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales. So I find it incredible that Amazon, who owns the rights to the appendices that were first published in Return of the King, did not even mention on any of their accounts on social media at all the 65th anniversary of the publishing of Return of the King this week.
Okay. Okay. I want
Why
to.
did Amazon not even mention what they just paid $250 million to license?
That's an interesting question. To
Do
answer
they not care
CyberLife,
about the book?
hold on. To answer somebody who was asking in the chat room, we're not talking about the Silmarillion appendices because they don't have any, actually. We're talking about the Lord of the Rings appendices because that is legally and categorically speaking the meat and potatoes of what Amazon is building their billion-dollar TV show around. So we're talking about the Lord of the Rings appendices being the ultimate thing that they licensed. But on the anniversary, you're telling me they didn't use their social media to even talk about the fact that what they're doing for $1 billion is the thing that just had its anniversary publishing date. So are you telling me that this is just another taste of them not really connecting or caring about
Do
what is
they
going on, or what?
do they even care? You would think that the
You
thing
know
that
what? I
they
think
license, the very, very, very specific thing that they are building this
that
TV show around, would
yes.
would even get a little mention. And it's not just like, hey, this is like the 57th anniversary, like some odd year. 65 years. 65. This is a
Okay.
momentous year, and it is the year
Mm-hmm.
that Christopher Tolkien passed. It's just, if
Mm-hmm.
Cliff, am I out of line to think to make hay more than necessary about this? Because I am fired up that, like, it just feels disrespectful to basically
You
pay
know,
the money, like to ignore Tolkien And the publishing of the
I don't know.
appendices.
I don't know. I mean, having a celebratory sense of it is what we do as a fandom. We are fans and we celebrate this stuff all the time. When there's another milestone, like the anniversary of 20 years ago they were filming the Fellowship of the Ring, then we get excited. When it's the anniversary of Return of the King or these beautiful books, Unfinished Tales, we talk about these anniversaries and we energize ourselves because it reminds us of how connected we are to the books and the world through this very literary and scholarly literary approach, which is our way of honoring Tolkien. I mean, the way that we like to honor Tolkien is taking and deriving so much of experiential pleasure and spiritual uplift and all these things that enrich our lives from these books. And we talk about these books all day, all night long. And that represents a large part of our energy as fans. It is translated to our energy in appreciating the video games. That book energy is directly translated to how much we love the old cartoons and the Peter Jackson movies. It's all connective tissue. It's why on the anniversary date, I published a public poll on the OneRing.net Twitter
Mm-hmm.
asking about the War of the Ring versus the Return of the King as a possible spoiler, and the disagreement between the publisher and
Yeah,
Professor Tolkien.
yeah.
And I even added an option at the end of that poll: book nerds, sheesh. And nobody voted for that. Like everybody had an opinion, and it was a rock solid tie, tens of thousands of votes between the War of the Ring and the Return of the King. And why is that? Because most of our fandom is engaged in a literary sense. We are that type of fandom. We are brain circuitry into a literary sense of Tolkien's world. It's just who we are. And
And
if Amazon doesn't get that, if their PR people do not understand that yet, then perhaps they are really not paying attention to the type of energy that suffuses all of our connective tissue together. If they don't get it, then maybe they don't get it. But
and we're
we as fans, we're going to still get it. We are here. We're still here. We are
and
still here,
but and
and
the
we get it.
fans are
We
not to
get it.
be feared. The fans are not to be feared because I think there's this uh, terrify. I think the studios and Amazon are scared in the wake of Star Wars that fans demand things, and it's like no, it like look at Marvel. The movies do not track to the history of the stories of Marvel. Yeah, there was a movie called Civil War, and there was a book series called Civil War, but they don't match one to one. But the audience and the fans were like, this is awesome.
Mm,
We just love to be in this world. We're okay with you exploring and adapting and doing what's best for the screen that may not have been good for the page and vice versa. But we this is where I think sometimes your hashtag fidelity to Tolkien becomes
mm.
terrifying to the guys that own this thing, Amazon, because fidelity does not mean accuracy.
Well, we're not. No one needs to lavish accuracy to parrot. You don't want to make a, you know, well, take a look at Gus Van Sant when he did a shot-for-shot remake of Alfred Hitchcock's classic movie Psycho.
Psycho, yeah.
No, no one wants that. Nobody wants a lavish, exact. You don't. I mean, you have to pay attention to a, a type of literary sense and some type of exactitude to the world and the timeline, but it doesn't need to be like slavishly. Let's just think about how quickly Peter Jackson was able to shuffle Aragorn out of the paths of the dead and then miraculously get him to the riverbank.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the geography, there's no way that they could exit at the stone of Erech. outside of the paths of the dead and be visually within sight distance of the banks of the river Anduin, where they met the ships of the enemy coming up the river. It just doesn't. So there are cheats. There's all kinds of little weird, funny cheats that you've got to put in there somehow, you know. But there it is.
Yeah. So,
But yeah.
I just wanted to remark that there's just little things that Amazon can do as the most powerful company on earth, the richest company on earth, led by the richest man in the history of the world. You would think there would just be a little effort made to, like, hey, this is significant, not just to fans. This is significant in the history of book publishing. Remember, Amazon started as a bookstore, right? Amazon's DNA originates in books. So you would think uh the biggest
Hmm.
selling
That that's not
fictional
ironic.
story, fictional book of the 20th century, the best-selling fictional book of the 20th century would get some sort of acknowledgement from a company founded on books and who is paid handsomely to control the rights to the future of that book series. So anyway,
Hmm.
uh,
Interesting point.
and
Well,
if you at home are are equally as frustrated with how Amazon is handling this, just from a marketing perspective, let me tell you that Amazon is hiring right now. If you go to jobs.amazon.com and you filter for Amazon Studios, they are hiring franchise
they are.
marketing people for Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time. So
They're
if you
hiring.
work in marketing and you work in this world of fan relations and social media management, they want real, true professionals because they do their homework when they hire. But if you think you can do better, uh, Amazon is hiring right now to manage the Lord of the Rings brand and Wheel of Time and other stuff. So go to jobs.amazon.com, put your resume in, put your CV in, get the job, move to LA, and be our little mole on the inside. No, I'm just kidding. I want you to keep your job, but I hope they hire well.
So, uh, Simon, are they hiring artists? Hmm. I don't think that they're hiring artists because
Amazon
the
won't hire
artists.
artists. The studios
No.
that are working on the show are hiring artists.
Hmm.
So
That's a
look at
different conversation. That's a different level of that. Yes.
ILM, Weta Digital, and Weta Workshop. Look at their job sites.
Um,
ILM, Weta Digital, Weta Workshop.
I would like to consider the possibility that now you said in the headline that they're 50% done with what they're filming now.
That's right. According to
Is this?
director J.A. Bayona, they have reached the
Hmm.
halfway mark of filming. Now, he didn't say they are if they're 50% done with the series. He just said he was 50% done. Suppose the original information that they released is that he is only responsible for the first two episodes, the pilot. J.A. Bayona
Hmm.
is directing the 2-episode pilot, which he has done for other shows, most notably Penny Dreadful. He filmed the
Correct.
first two pilot episodes.
Correct.
By the
And
way, watch Penny Dreadful. That's your homework this week. Watch Penny Dreadful.
okay. And and further to that point, there has not been any news or any press releases from Amazon Studios about who is directing the other episodes that are supposed to be part of the aforementioned, first season, which is allegedly going to launch and continue only to 8 episodes complete. Now, a lot of fans were
Hold up,
talking in the
wait.
live.
You just said
They were
8
talking in the live chat
episodes?
about, yeah, well, not me, but earlier in the chat in our broadcast, I saw fans discussing that there was 8 when Tom Shippey had said something about there being 20 episodes, but I thought that, Justin, you had leaked information a couple of months ago, or maybe earlier this year. We're living in time soup. Thank you, John Oliver. But I mean, how much time has passed since you, Justin, personally leaked the information that it was going to be 8 episodes for season one?
It's been months, and it's great to see that all of those rumors again that we posted months ago have been validated by other sources. Cliff, I mean, how
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
almost everything that
Mm-hmm.
we've said, and I know folks on Reddit and I know folks in the chat room want to find every fault that we say and like you're liars because of that one thing. I mean, Cliff, you hate to admit it, but most of the rumors that I've talked about on the show have panned out true, whether it's Tom Shippey, John Howe, the staffing, the pause. Are there writers on set in New Zealand? They are not. And now
Mm-hmm.
we're at 8 episodes. The first season will be eight
Okay.
episodes. This week, the big news this week is that Amazon is officially allowing the entire crew to update their IMDb profiles with Lord of the Rings. So we are going to have a huge list of cast and crew coming up real soon, and we can dive into. I mean, it's going to take a lot of work getting their resumes together. What have they worked on before? But I can tell you, we've doubled our list of names of people involved in this series. We can't go into it today because we're going to put together a great show in the coming weeks that dives into all the updates. And here's the juicy little rumor. Are you ready for some Green Dragon gossip, Clifford?
Sure, but before we get the Green Dragon gossip, I want
Okay.
to acknowledge in the live chat the people who are talking about Tom Bombadil thumbs up or Tom Bombadil thumbs down. I can see you guys chatting, Princess Toy Nerd, Mr. Sap, and Andrew, and all the other. There's a lot of cool people chatting about this, and let's just put this to rest, okay? If Because some people are saying I love Tom Bombadil, and some people are saying I skip that part in the book. If you're going to do anything ever, and I'm not really saying that they should, but if they do license Tom Bombadil, it should strictly be used in one of two ways. Either you make a puzzle solving video game where you run around for hours and hours collecting lily pads and you take them to your lady,
I think it should
your
be a
lady
phone.
Goldberry.
I think that would be a
You
fun
take
little
a phone app.
like
It'd be a fun
phone
phone
app.
app. Yeah, it'd
Yeah.
be a phone app game. Yeah, collecting water lilies for Goldberry. Or in a second capacity, Tom Bombadil would likely be good as a, you know, children's very young, like 5-year-old kids animated series, like, for like Blue's Clues. It should be like Tom Bombadil Blue's Clues kid show for kids. Really, trust me. But otherwise,
You
we're
know,
done with the Tom Bombadil thing.
I want an iPhone app where that constructs sentences like autocorrect does, because that's basically how he's written in the books. Before autocorrect even existed, right? Uh, like he just talks
Yep.
like that.
But if you do a video game where you're doing like these more complex puzzle solving things, like the classic video game Myst or other puzzle solving world building type of games, you could actually put in fun references to other Lord of the Rings characters who
That's
come
right.
in and out of the area. But Tom Bombadil would never leave the boundaries of the old forest. So the game would always have other characters coming into the environment from the outside world.
Yeah,
So here, why don't we?
Mr. Slap in the chat room is posting comments like with autocorrect. Like that's exactly how he spoke. Like
Hey, hey, doll,
automatic.
dairy doll, Dillo. Yeah, okay.
uh, uh,
I'm going to start doing the dairy doll, Dillo poems.
yeah,
Now,
you should. Hey,
I
Fellowship
don't
of
know why wouldn't some video game company hire me as a story consultant for their Tom Bombadil video game?
Well,
Why don't we just do
there's
that?
a Gollum
Let's
game
do
out
that.
there. Imagine if the Gollum game goes to Tom Bombadil's house. We can't wait for that Gollum game. Hey, Fellowship of the Fans
I am looking forward to that. Yes,
is in
yes.
the chat room and is announcing that This week, uh, Amazon's Lord of the Rings are filming on the beaches of Auckland. If you live near Auckland, take a mosey down to the beaches. They are filming in and amongst the water and the sand. So this must be the edges of Numenor. Maybe, maybe it's just the beach. We never really see beaches, right? We saw a waterfall. Um, but so Amazon's Lord of the Rings series this week is filming along the beaches. So if you see or hear anything,
Yes.
snap a photo, send it to us in DMs. Now, Cliff, do you want to know what the Green Dragon gossip is?
Tell me, yes, what is the Green Dragon gossip, my friend? Because no episode of Torn Tuesday would be complete without somebody, wildly casting aspersions into the ether. Let's let's cast some aspersions, shall we?
Just like Amazon's commitment to the director of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, who
Say that
was
again. What?
the
Start that
director.
sentence again.
Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, your favorite TV show of the year that was just
And
canceled.
you're talking about the director of that show, Louis
Louis
Leterrier.
Leterrier. It is
Yeah, who
very
also directed Luke Evans in Clash of the Titans,
who
way
also
before Luke
directed the
Evans.
Hulk. Didn't he direct the Hulk with Edward Norton?
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
that was actually that's good stuff.
that's good stuff.
Yeah,
So,
that's good stuff.
but Cliff,
Good
as
stuff.
as you know, through your television experience, it is very
Yes, tell me.
rare. It is very rare that one director is given the reins of an entire series, an entire season of a series. It is,
And it
and it was
worked.
it.
It worked well for Dark Crystal. It worked very well for Dark
I
Crystal.
mean, did it work well enough to get renewed?
They won the Emmy.
Oh,
They
they did. They
won the.
they,
Did they wait?
they
Hold on.
sure
You know what
did.
happens, Justin? They won. They won the Emmy, and they won the hearts of a whole generation of Jim Henson fans. Big time.
And
Super successful. Very
and then you know what
successful.
they did with those hearts? They broke it in half by canceling the show. Louis
Which is
Leterrier,
terrible.
but
It's
Cliff, it
terrible.
was a big deal that Louis Leterrier was the director on every episode of the Dark Crystal
Yes,
series.
and that is
Correct?
rare. That is rare. It's
It's
very rare.
rare.
Yes,
It's rare.
but
It's
he
pink.
was the
It's like
centerpiece. He's the centerpiece. Yes.
right. The Green Dragon gossip is J.A. Bayona has the full commitment of Amazon to direct the entire series for Lord of the Rings. And when he says he's
That
50% done, he is 50% done of the first season. He's shot 4 episodes out of the 8, and
really
they are working hard, and this is going to be a singular vision. One
okay. That is a
director,
smart thing.
one season, a singular vision. Cliff, what is one of the things that you've been talking about? How do you make this great? How do you make this show great? And it was
You
all
should.
about
You should. It's
trusting
well,
a singular vision.
trusting a singular vision. Do you know what? That is the smartest thing that Amazon Studios could do. Would be to give that kind of autonomy to a person like the way that Netflix gave Louis Leterrier the autonomy to handle, very carefully consider, to carefully craft a delicate franchise, a beautiful franchise that people have a legacy relationship with. So if Netflix could do that with Louis Leterrier for The Dark Crystal, and the results were wonderful, then the smartest thing they could do would be to centralize the creative focus and the people who work on a team. It helps with team building. It certainly helps with the production staff to be driven by one captain who's driving the ship. Creatively, it's very good for the actors too. And yeah, there's a lot of good reasons for them to centralize into J.A. Bayona. That is this is what Gandalf would say. That is an encouraging thought. That this rumor of yours, it's encouraging. Hmm.
Sean says he's a mediocre director. I would suggest, Sean, revisiting the first two pilot episodes of Penny Dreadful and revisit The Impossible starring Tom Holland in his
Mm-hmm.
very first movie role. So if you want to talk about, Amazon has hired a cast of unknowns for Lord of the Rings. If you want to know how Bayona handles a cast of unknowns, talk about the
Mm-hmm.
genius of Bayona finding Tom Holland and putting him in the role that the movie The Impossible requires.
Okay. Well,
It launched Tom
mm,
Holland's career.
I I haven't seen the Penny Dreadful TV series
You
at
have to
all.
watch it, Cliff.
I
You
haven't
have
seen
to
it.
watch Penny Dreadful.
Okay.
As soon as
Well,
you see it,
don't.
you will be so comforted
Oh no, I don't know.
in the
No, I'm not
control.
going to be. I'm not going to be comforted until I see the scripts. I'm not. I'm not. I am not. Look, I appreciate the work that J.A. Bayona has done on a lot of his projects, especially Monster Calls and The Impossible. But I haven't seen Penny Dreadful yet. But let's not oversell it. Let's not oversell it.
I'm just saying
But
that's your
let's.
homework this week, folks. Find and watch Penny Dreadful. I believe
Well, I'll try
it's
it.
on
I'll give it a
Showtime.
try.
I believe it's on
I'll give it a try.
Showtime or Epic or something like that.
Yeah,
Find Penny Dreadful. That's your homework. Just watch the first two
I'll give it
episodes.
a try.
Not this season,
But
the first season. The first season,
I
episode
think
1.1.
I think this is a rumor you're telling me about Bayona staying on for all 8 episodes to do the entire season. Is this a rumor?
This is the rumor that Bayona has taken on responsibility to direct the entire first season, and the he Amazon trusts his instincts more than they
Yes.
do the
Yeah.
showrunners that have no experience whatsoever in anything and have never produced
Okay.
anything. So
I'm intrigued.
it's a good sign. Now, I will say this.
I agree. That is an interesting sign. If that's true, an interesting sign. Yes.
But we have to remember the first season of Walking Dead on AMC had a visionary director and showrunner, and they had a huge
Hmm.
falling out and
Yeah, and a very publicized,
very
big publicized
publicized.
falling out.
And a lot of
Yes.
people will
Are you,
say
you're
the
talking about Frank Darabont?
talking about Frank Darabont, Shawshank Redemption himself, Frank
Hmm.
Darabont, who has
Yes.
absolutely has the
Yes.
quality for anything, but for some
Hmm.
reason he was pushed out of Walking Dead.
Indeed.
So there are strengths and and weaknesses to giving one person sole control, but it is very unique. And honestly, after the Dark Crystal succeeded so well with having one
Hmm.
director, this is only good news. Only good
Hmm.
news. Um,
Hmm.
okay, Cliff. As we wrap up, I just
Okay.
wanted to
Intriguing.
ask the chat.
Intriguing.
I want to get. I had an idea. Let me get the chat room's response, and let me get your response.
Okay. I,
Is
I
this
asked. I
crazy?
wanted to put a. I want to put a question out to the chat as well. Um, I really do, but I think I might put another poll. I might actually make it into another poll online.
Yeah,
We'll see.
let's
We'll
do
see
that.
about that. Okay.
Hey, next Tuesday, we do this show every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m.
Hmm.
Eastern. We've been doing it for years. Next Tuesday is a pretty significant Tuesday in the history of the world. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and we either we do a show or we don't. And if we do a show, we should do it earlier in the day. Actually, you know what?
Nah,
I don't.
I don't.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if I'm
should
gonna be in the mood to do
I
a
don't think so
show
either.
because there's a lot
Um,
riding on what happens next Tuesday.
I think that one side of that possibility is we could provide some distraction for the people who are standing in long lines who are voting next Tuesday.
Well,
We
I
could
don't think they're
provide
going to
some
waste their
fun.
battery watching us
No,
in
I
line. So I wanted to get a
I
pulse
think it
from
would be
you, Cliff,
smarter.
and from the chat
I
room if uh, if you're okay, if we should skip. I feel like next
Yeah.
Tuesday there's so much going on.
my instinct, my immediate instinct, my first instinct is to not have the show next week. That way, everybody can focus on getting to where they need to get, and helping their friends get to the polling place if they need to. I've got a friend, our downstairs neighbor, and he has difficulty moving and getting in and out of the car. But we're gonna make sure that he gets his ballot dropped off, and I think he wants to do it himself. Instead of him just dropping it in the mail, I think we're going to actually take our neighbor, who can't move much, and we're going to take him to physically drop
That's
it off,
great. That's
and
great.
like it's
Well,
going to be,
you could do
we're
that
going to
right
help
now.
people get to the ballot place.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
you
actually,
could do that all
I'm
week.
I'm going to go vote at the Magic Castle. I used to be a
There you go.
bartender. I used to work as a bartender at the Magic Castle, which is the most
Which has been
amazing
closed now.
private
Now they do
and
drive up
closed all
comedy
year.
shows. They do drive up comedy
Yeah,
shows at the Magic
it's
Castle parking
crazy.
lot.
I'm going to vote there. Yeah.
So everyone in the chat room, thank you for your opinions. I think I'm internally split as well,
Mhm.
just as the chat room is. Like, yes, we could use a distraction, but gosh, there's much more important things to focus on next week. Cliff, I think you and I will just talk offline throughout the week and see how we feel. So if we
Yeah.
don't come back next week, I hope we don't lose any of you. I mean, the other thing that we could do is maybe we could have some fun, and maybe we can do an election show, but it's an election for the mayor of Hobbiton.
The mayor of Hobbiton. Oh, we could. That's funny. Do you know what? We could put up a graphic. Let's just put up a graphic, just a graphic of like the names of the people who are competing or running against each other in the Shire, and then we can have people do the poll on Twitter, and then we can just post the graphic, with a time clock and say time is running out. Vote on Twitter, and vote for the mayor of the Shire, and then we'll just post a graphic.
No,
That's all. Let's just run a thing.
we could do a whole hour of like as the election results come in from Brandybuck Bridge and from the red states of Farmer Maggot's farm, and
No,
Rohan reporting in. Oh, it's going towards Saruman.
he's not
Gamgee
running for
2020.
mayor.
Gamgee 20. What do you
He's
mean?
not.
Saruman, we never saw it in the movies, but there's a whole scouring of the Shire. Like, what if
But
Saruman ran
no,
for mayor and we didn't know about it because he
no,
was on?
no,
There's a lot
no. I
in
wouldn't.
between the pages.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do this unless it was really like harmless. I wouldn't bring in any other evil characters. I would stick with hobbits, and I would make it really harmless and fun, so that people can let off some steam and have what
I
we
like
need.
this
We
Sharky
need some.
fella. Sharky
No,
2020.
no, no. We want some. We do
Yes.
not.
Oh, so you're for Gamgee, I'm for Sharky. Look. I think we
No.
have a great roundtable debate. Let's trust him on the issues. He's going to modernize the Shire.
You're so funny. You're so funny. Stop it. Oh my gosh. All right. It's
Hey,
time. It's time to say goodnight, everybody. It's
hey,
time to say goodnight.
well, if we see you next week, I hope we see you. If we don't, we'll play it by ear. But remember, Aragorn was not elected. The only person in the Lord of the Rings that was ever elected to office was Samwise. He was elected
Mm,
7 terms, and he finally removed his name from the ballot after his wife and children had all died, and he went west and joined Frodo in Valinor. So Samwise, the only elected character in Lord of the Rings.
that we know of. Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
So
Intriguing.
all right, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this little history of the Silmarillion and a little history of the appendices. More importantly, of the appendices, and
And
the
let's
happy
just say
birthday
again,
to Return of the King.
happy birthday. Happy birthday to ROTK, even though it could have been the War of the Ring if Tolkien had had his way. That's what it would have been. He wanted, he wanted to get the ring back in the title again. And so I'm going to say, everybody, you are the best audience on earth. Thank you for all the people around the world who stay up very late hours in different time zones. And to all the good spirits out there, all you good people, thank you for joining us here at theonering.net. Justin, thank you for the gossip. I'm very intrigued, very intrigued. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I will be available next Tuesday. I'm, going to be helping people vote. It's going to be awesome because it's intriguing. It's just, we're getting, we're getting to see actual democracy in action, where the people, the vox populi, are actually getting to vote. And it's a fascinating process. It is, I have to admit, one way or another, it is endlessly fascinating to see Americans go to the ballots and do this voting thing. It's always fascinating to me, always has been. So I think you guys are the best, and we'll give you a shout out online about whether we'll do some kind of a election graphic or something. Until then, everybody stay safe and warm, and we're praying for some of our staff. We have close friends and staff who are in Irvine, California, right now.
There's been fires
face to
all year
face.
long. Fires
But
all year
now
long. We're still
but
under
now
fire.
it's one of our, not only we have the second time
Yeah,
this
it's
year. First
nonstop.
it was
It's
the Rice
crazy.
family, and now we
And
have more staff trying to pack up and evacuate from the
that's right.
Silverado fire. So say a prayer for the people who are facing some dangers out there tonight. And you guys are the best. Until next week, stay safe, and buenas noches y buena suerte. Next Tuesday, we'll see you at 5 o'clock.